stuff. The last couple starts I felt really good. But, baseball is a tricky sport where it doesn't always go your way. But today it definitely went my way. I made some pitches, and, Fagley killed a hell of a game.
Oh, there we go. The Oakland A's, Moneyball and all that. Mike Fiers getting his second no-hitter of his career. Here's what he had to say about remembering both of them as he joins a list of, I mentioned so many of them off the top of my head. Let's see here. There's Steve Busby. There's Johnny Vandermeer, did it in successive starts. There's Virgil Fire Trucks, and who did it in the same season with a 5-19 record for the 52 Tigers. The Reds in 65, there's a pitcher, I believe, Jim Maloney, who threw 2 no-hitters, one of them which was a 10-inning no-hitter. But anyway, here's Fiers remembering both historic occasions.
Just a little older, really. I think I was running out of gas a little bit, losing some velocity, but, it was all about making my pitches, throwing everything for strikes, and then expanded when the guys started swinging.
There you go. When the guys started swinging all this, here is the call of the no-no from the Oakland A's radio network.
Reading Fagley. Now ready. Here's the turn, the kick, and the 2-2 delivery is swung on and missed on a breaking ball in the dirt. And Mike Fiers has thrown his second no-hitter. And tonight, on May 7th, 2019, he has done it for the Oakland A's. And the A's have blanked the Cincinnati Reds by the final of 2-0.
Anyhow, that is the fun. You hear the celebration going on right there with Kool and the Gang and such. So that's a victory song right there. Love it, child of the 80s, that sort of thing. By the way, though, I mentioned in the previous segment about the light delay. Here's David Bell of the Reds. He's their manager, and he's talking about the light delay before the ball game, although he is complimentary to Mike Fiers.
No, maybe during the game, but definitely not to start a game. And as it turned out, even if the lights didn't come on, it seemed like it wasn't too bad. They have good lights here, because even without those on, it seemed plenty light enough. But really nobody knew what it was going to be like until it got dark, and I get why we were delayed, just to make sure.
If you didn't know, they were about 15 minutes away from canceling, or at least postponing the game last night that Mike Fiers threw his no-hitter, 2-0 for the A's against the Reds. He was, so that made it even more, all right, kind of dramatic. Ball game thankfully lasted far less than 2 hours. After that, this goes back into why I keep saying, we've got to build every new ballpark from here on out with a retractable dome. You've just, rain delays they got to be a thing of the past. You schedule a game, people want to know that they're going to be able to go to the game. Not that, weather permitting, you don't have that in any other sport. This is 2019, you've got to have that. I'm not suggesting we rip up all the ballparks and build them with retractable domes. No. But I do think it's absurd, let's say, that the Minnesota Twins go from a dome stadium, when you consider their climate and what it would be early in the year, as well as if they made the World Series again, and to going outside, even as nice as Target Field may be on a pleasant summer's day. Because, you know what? You can build a ballpark with a dome, a retractable dome, and it'll still be pleasant on a summer's day. All right. Now, looking out there, David, we're talking a little bit about that. Now, the one thing about being able to no-hit the Reds is the rookie sensation Nick Senza from the Tennessee Volunteers. He had 3 home runs in his first 4 games in the major leagues. Now, he's only hitting 200 overall, so that should be mentioned right there. Of course, he took the collar last night due to the fact that the Redlegs were no hit. But even so, 3 home runs for the former Tennessee Volunteer Nick Senzel in his first 5 games. That's not bad. I don't have to tell you that. Here is one of those dingers from earlier on in the campaign.
Now with his drill back into deep right field. Did he get another one? He did. This game ain't that easy. 2 opposite field home runs his first 2 times up. 3 home runs already since coming up from Louisville and starting on Friday night. And the Reds have a 6-1 lead.
Well, the Reds are the only team in the NL Central that don't have a winning record. But you know what? I will say this. The Reds, what was it, yesterday or so, the light delay? You know, they didn't have the right lights. In San Francisco, the game was delayed by a swarm of bees.
I've never seen anything like that. Nobody really knew what to do. Nobody really knew when to start the game. And hopefully I didn't hear if anyone got stung or injured, but hopefully not.
The Braves, 2 cities ago, and many generations ago, were once known as the Bees. From 36 to, I think, 40, the Boston Braves were the Boston Bees. Yes. See, they had performed very poorly, one of the worst teams of all time in 35, so they decided, hey, let's try changing things up. So they called themselves the Bees. There were a few teams back in those days that tried to change their name. The Phillies went by Blue Jays, or at least tried to make the transition in the 40s. Didn't work out. But yeah, so the Braves became the Bees for 4 years, I think it was. And then they went back to the Braves after that. And they've been the Braves since then. But yes, Casey Stengel, I think, managed the Bees. But the 35 team, Babe Ruth and Rabbit Moranville played for the 35 Braves. Okay, they're just totally horrible. Walt Dropo. I love talking about these things, and people tell me that you lose your audience. Nobody cares about that. Oh, well. Anyway, it's just that we have a pitcher who throws 2 no-hitters in his career. Just, Mike Fiers and all that. Well, where does it relate to baseball history? That's the thing here in all this. Speaking of history, the St. Louis Blues are trying to make the Stanley Cup Finals for the first time since 1970, when Scotty Bowman coached them. Now, in those days, in fact, the Blues made the Stanley Cup Finals in their first 3 seasons in the NHL. They haven't been back. In those days, the divisions were as such. You had the original 6 teams in one division and the expansion teams in the other. They had 6 expansion teams. The NHL doubled in size in 1967. So it was inevitable that one of those expansion teams were going to go play for the Stanley Cup. They did not fare well. They got I think they got swept in each of the 3 seasons. The Boston Bruins, as a matter of fact, did it in 1970 in the famous goal scored by Bobby Orr to win the Stanley Cup. Probably the most famous goal in hockey history, where as he scored, there's a photo that shows him leaping, and he's parallel with the ice, sort of flying with a bird, like a bird and all that. But nevertheless, St. Louis Blues go to the Stanley Cup Finals. Not the finals, the semifinals, after they beat the team that eliminated the Predators, the Dallas Stars, in 7 games in the most dramatic fashion. Tied 1-1, going into double overtime. And then
Double overtime here in Game 7, and you're just tuning in, or you're wondering what you're listening to tonight. Blues and Stars tied 1-1, done in the first. Zuccarello in the first. Those are the goal scorers. Blues have the puck. Thomas off the wall. Shoots, and it's in. They score! It's the St. Louisan. Pat Maroon. Bring out the Zamboni. Pat Maroon just put the city on his shoulders, and he sends them to the conference finals. A 2-1 win in double overtime over the Dallas Stars.
I guess there's a chance that we could have a rematch of that 70 Stanley Cup playoffs that has become so memorable in hockey lore because of Bobby Orr. Hey, that rhymed. If the Bruins are able to beat the Canes, the bunch of jerks from, as Don Cherry, the ex-Bruins coach, would call them, Of course, who the Blues will play, that'll be decided tonight when the Lanch take on the Sharks. Yeah, you could have a big market, and all that, but I kind of like the scrappy Blues. And I am surprised in a little bit that they have not made the Stanley Cup Finals in almost a half century, or not when it wasn't waited for them to make it. Seems to me that it's been pretty much a successful franchise. I mean, you think Brett Hull. Hey, I once saw Wayne Gretzky. I was there one day when Mario Lemieux scored 7 points against Wayne Gretzky and the Penguins beat the Blues 8-4. Gretz played briefly for the Blues in '96. But nevertheless, that was, it's a team with a little bit of history here, but they haven't been able to win the Stanley Cup. They'll get their opportunity if they can defeat either the Sharks or the Lanch in the next round. Coming back after this, Tri-City Sports Now.
Love strawberries. Come and celebrate.